Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Growing Farms Podcast with your hosts, Troy Bishop, the Grass Whisperer, and me, John Suscovich. On today's episode, Troy and I talk about the best advice we have ever gotten. Here's the show.
There you go.
All right, so here we are, back again. People are like, what are they going to talk about today? Well, what are we talking about today, Johnny?
Well, it's Season 2. We're asking questions. I got one question. I want to know what your opinion is. I'm going to give you my opinion, then we're going to bail on all of this all together until next week, next episode. And the question that I got for you today, Troy, is what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten? Can
I ask you what yours is?
So, I mean, starting with the best piece of advice I've ever gotten, and I'm sorry to say that this one kicks back to you, man. Or actually, I'm happy to say it, and that is you taught me this crazy 3-letter word. That's why. And I got into agriculture, and I was like, this is the way it is. And I was new, and I was reading the books, and if it's in a book, it has to be real. It has to be the right piece of information because, ideally the author would have researched what they're writing, and I just went ahead of my path. And then you came along and you were like, but why? Well, you're doing that, but why? Well, you're doing that, you're feeling this way, but why? And I was like, that makes good sense. I wonder where else this applies in life. So, you're going along and something frustrates you and you get angry and you're like, well, why am I angry? You can act on that and do something that you're going to regret, or you can take a step back and pause and ask why. And you do that on everything, good, bad, indifferent. So you do something bad and you ask yourself, why? Why am I mad right now? What's bothering me? And how do I fix it? And then you go about the positive steps of fixing that situation. You're happy. You're like, I am on top of the world. I woke up this morning and I'm just like, bam, 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 get stuff done. Why? Why did that happen? Maybe you went to bed on time. Maybe last night was pretty good for you. Maybe the morning was good for you. Maybe you had the right kind of coffee. Maybe things are going right in your life. You step back when you're happy and you pause for a second and you say, well, why am I happy and how do I do it again? Because I don't know about you, but like being happy is great. That's something I want to do all the time. And I've gotten to where I am in life because I started to ask why for everything. And when it's bad, I say, why is it bad and how do I avoid that? And when it's good, I say, why is it good and how do I get that again? When something is broken, why did it break and how do I keep it from breaking? When a marketing thing clicks and it works, you don't go, hey, people are subscribing and I don't know why, but it's great. I guess I'll just pretend like it never happened and move on forward. You go, okay, I talked about this in this video and I structured it this way and I put in these cutscenes and this was what the thumbnail looked like and the title, and you're like, all right. And now I've got this recipe for, not recipe for everybody's success, but recipe for my own success. I'm an owner of a very successful farm brewery in Western Connecticut. It's doing well. We make great beer. I get to run the agricultural side of it. I have a great relationship with my wife and my daughter. We're having another daughter in May, which is awesome. I have wonderful friends like my mentor on Skype, Troy Bishop. And the people in my life that are toxic, I cut out and say, is this relationship bad? Why is it bad? Is it fixable on my end or their end? If it's not, I'm a busy guy. I don't have time for anybody's drama, right? The people who I have good relationships with, I'm like, well, I still don't have any time, but I want to hang out with them more. So I'll start a podcast so that we can hang out and chat more often about a project we're working on together or whatever the case is. But good, bad, or indifferent, stepping back and asking why. When I was on the farm and like struggling and you were like, why are you doing it that way? It'd be easier if you just didn't do it that way. And I'm like, well, because it's head to somewhere. And you're like, well, do what's right for the animals and your job will get easier.
Of course, asking why without having a positive solution would be stupid. So, when I said,
you can't let that keep you from asking why. You ask why so that you can find a positive solution.
Right. When I said, why are you doing that? I wanted you to repeat back to me that, well, someone said you couldn't have more than one blade of grass on a fence charger with 10,000 volts on it. I'm like, okay, but I had to prove the why. And then
Yeah.
once it wasn't like why just to be annoying, although
This is all right.
you were sort of young and dumb, and I was old and tired, so I wanted to have it easier for me. That's why I was like, wow, I guess you're 20 and I'm not, so you can do this, but sooner or later you'll be older like me and you'll be like, well, I do. So asking why without solutions wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
So now that we've so that why is a great question. I would have to actually say that's a really good.
This is a good piece of advice. That's like you're a real smart guy.
Yeah, I know. It's not true, but so when after you've talked about the why, I'm actually thinking of a quote or two quotes because my brain is slow. But one piece
It's
of
not.
advice.
I wouldn't say it's slow. It's methodical.
Okay, whatever you want to say. One of my grandfather Steele had this quote, and I had it written down, and it's so simple. And maybe he copied it from somebody. I don't know. I've never researched it on the internet, but he said, "Sometimes I sits and thinks, and sometimes I just sits." Like that's pretty deep because I know my grandfather, and I know that he was a farmer, but he was an outdoorsman. He fished probably every Sunday after church. He hunted, and his time with that phrase was always in the woods. And every time he said it, we were always in the woods at a place where, I'm trying to kill the squirrel. I'm like up there going, come on, these squirrels! I'm running around. I want to get something done. And he's sitting there going, and I'm going, what are you doing? Well, I'm just sitting here. And then he would start to whistle like a squirrel, and the squirrels would actually come to him, and he'd just sit there and wait for them to come, and he'd shoot them. Me, I'm around the woods, and I'm like, and then when we went fishing, he would fish with a right next to the boat. He'd drop a minnow with an old cork that just sat on top of the water, and my brother and I were like casting and like trying to draw the fish in. We had to have movement, and he just sat there smoking his pipe, sitting there, and we're just, he's probably just laughing like, yep, that youthful exuberance, just trying to get something done. And he sat there, and we would catch little fish, we'd create more commotion, and all of a sudden he'd start reeling, and he'd pull up a 4-foot or 3-foot pickerel, and we're like, oh my God, this is incredible. Look at like the trophy of all trophies. And he's like, yep. That's what sitting and, thinking and waiting and patience, and that's the reward, right? And we're running around being crazy, and he's focused and methodical. And so then that plays into the next quote that I seem to have stumbled upon in my linger grazing mantra of lingering, trying to slow down and take it in. I have to force myself to do that. I'm not the best practitioner, I'm admitting. But the thing I like, again, it came out of maybe alcohol, maybe it just came to me, whatever. But thinking about the big things and how they affect the small things. I think that's what it is. Or no, other way around. Thinking about the little affects the bigger things. Right? Because
I would say it works both ways, thinking how the big things affect the small things, and then turning that on its head, and the small things affect the big things. I got into farming because I like to eat, and I have a terrible immune system and a weak stomach, which is why I didn't see you in person right now, because my stomach's rough at the moment. And I was like, well, if you eat grass-fed meat, and then you're like, what makes grass-fed meat healthy? Well, there's grass. What makes the grass healthy? The microbes. And what does make the microbes healthy? Well, the relationship between the cow and the grass and the micro, like that whole system. And it's how the big things affect the small things and how the small things affect the big things. And when you focus on every part of the chain and you start at the beginning on how the small things affect the big things, the healthier your soil is, the healthier your animal is, the healthier you're going to be when you eat it. And that has been a focus of mine, having completely gone through a life shift into agriculture. That quote actually makes total sense.
I don't think we focus on the small stuff enough. Because, if you said, well, I'm asking why, it always starts with the small stuff. And then well, how do I get better? It always starts small, right? It's incremental smallness changes. It can't be like, well, it could be one big breakthrough, but usually there's a step of small to improve. So the question I have is, do we ask ourselves why enough? Ooh.
Whoa.
The bigger we. Do we ask why enough? And that could transcend politics to farming to just schooling to whatever goes on in life. Do we ask why enough? I'd have to say hell no.
No, not at all.
Because I don't think we like the answer, or we don't.
Sometimes the answer makes you have to do work, or it points out a personal flaw in it, and that asking why and finding out that you're doing something wrong runs up against your ego. And if you learn to diminish your ego and get rid of your, you can have pride in what you do, but not foolish pride or hubris or, foolish overconfidence, where if you're all right with being wrong and taking a hit and saying, I was wrong, I screwed up, but if I eat that pride and I fix the problem, I can be right. And that's rewarding when you're like, yes, my ego was wrong and I went on it because I thought it was the right idea and I even fought for it, but it turns out I was wrong. Saying, okay, I was wrong, moving on.
All right, I'm poking the bear right now.
Oh, I'll poke the bear.
Okay. So do you think men have a fatal flaw in asking why versus the ladies? Ladies seem to do a lot better job of why than we do.
Yeah, I absolutely think that is the case. And it took me a long time to get here, where I know looking back at our relationship, Kate was here years and years ago before I was. Maybe that's something that attracted me to her in the first place. From the very beginning of our relationship, we were friends for a year before we started dating, and then we've been together for a zillion years now in our time. She always said, "Don't go to bed angry." We never went to bed angry. We don't really fight that much because neither one of us at this point has an ego. But in the beginning, I would get a little worked up about something or other. It didn't have to be about her. I would just be angry, and then she'd be the one I was talking to. And that thing of like being calm, being collected, asking why, and getting to the source of the problem. Are you really angry, or are you just angry to be angry? Like, will you be angry about the same thing tomorrow? And yeah, I think wholeheartedly that women are the future of ag in the U.S.
Heavy endorsement.
I find in general they're more organized and passionate, and like men, like all the content creators are all the egotistical men, including myself, who are like up in front of a camera and like, this is the way you do it. And it's all the ladies behind like doing the work. And a lot of the successful farms that I've found and run into are run by driven, passionate, intelligent women who are no nonsense, who cut to the chase because they get a lot of stuff done and they don't have time for like foolish projects. They're just like doing it. And I ringing endorsement for women in agriculture.
So have you ever read the book? The book, is it Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Is that the name of the book?
I've never read the book.
So they're, us men, we're fixers, right? We're wired differently. So that's what you just said. You make a good team because, yeah, you're you, and you need Kate to complete you. just like I need my wife, and she doesn't actually deserve me and all my issues, but somehow
You make it work.
over 33 years we have just, it takes work and compromise, and I'm learning. I definitely have an ego. There's no question about it. I'm the best at, in my mind, I'm the best at grazing, let's say, or I want to be the best, and I got an ego about it. I want to be in the New York Times someday. I want to, I want to do this, and it drives me because I have to. I got a goal. I'd like to reach it, but along the way, you have to find that sort of that sweet spot between ego and stress and life, and again that lingering, that stress relief. Remember last
That
episode
pause.
we talked about purging, and then we also talked about that purge, that venting. In our important part of our social structure is our wives,
Yeah.
right? And in my line of work, I think that a lot of the ladies are unappreciated. They're not in the decision making as much as they could because they're looking at it from a different perspective. And I think it's necessary that we all get perspective because, again, I think you've said it 3 times now. No one goes to your funeral and says, look at how much work he did. No one cares.
So if I can put this all together, as I'm working it out in my head right now, we're talking about it. We, through this conversation, have pointed out that one of the biggest benefits to just your life in general, but we'll just stick to ag because it's our farming podcast, is pause and lingering, and sometimes it just sits. If I was left to my own devices as a type A male, I would just go steam train. I don't like to sleep. I sleep like 4 or 5 hours and I have 5 hours a night now. I would work myself to the bone. And one of the biggest benefits from having a partner, whether it's a wife, a husband, a business partner, having somebody like Kate in my life to get me to pause and stop for a second, eat, rest, go to bed on time, has gotten me to where I am today. Because if I didn't have her in my life to get me to pause, to help me learn that skill of stopping, then I would have burnt out. I would have changed careers. Something dramatic would be dramatically different. And now taking that time, actively working on that skill, it's a skill. Stopping is a skill if you're a type of person who is driven to always move forward, right? Without that, I wouldn't take the time to watch my daughter grow up. I wouldn't take the time to invest in the relationships that matter in my life. And once you learn that skill of stopping, pausing, asking why, you start to see it in everything.
So this seems like a glowing endorsement for wives or partners or
ladies in agriculture, man.
Whatever.
Men have to learn to stop and ask why they're doing what they're doing, because we didn't, and we had Earl Butts, and we ended up with fence row to fence row, and now our soils are depleting and eroding. We have that green death zone in the Gulf of Mexico. Our oceans are full of plastic because the world is run by men, and it's an influx of women who are making us go, all right, men, you've had your time. Now we're going to stop and ask why. Why did we get into the place that we are today? And then now that we've stopped and asked, you're going to come in, help me with a solution. We've got the fixes to the problems. They're going to take some time. They're not going to be the flash dance that you men like to see. It's going to be the slow trudge, the methodical mindset of getting it done, seeing the projects done over time, and fixing the things that you guys screwed up because you just bowled ahead without stopping to ask why. That's right.
Whew.
Yeah, and, you hit the button, Troy. And now I'm fired up.
That's going to bode really well because Mabel and your future daughter are going to listen to this.
I'm future-proofing myself.
Few years, yeah, they're going to say, "Yeah, hey, Dad, I got this right on tape right here.
You said, yeah, I'm in charge."
Yeah, and I have 3 daughters and 3 granddaughters. So I know where you're coming from. I'm
In charge of making the world a better place, Troy. That's what you've been doing.
What you're saying. So
All right. I think that's a good stopping point. If you think that's a good stopping point, that was today's question wrapped up right there.
You wrapped her up. You spanked that Earl Butts. Woo!
There's a reason why his last name is Butts.
Yeah.
And that's it for this episode of the Growing Farms Podcasts. If you want to follow along, you can subscribe wherever you catch podcasts or go to farmmarketingsolutions.com. There's a big button on the homepage that will take you exactly where you need to go. For now, I hope you have a great week, and we'll be in your ears with a new episode next Thursday where we talk about what keeps us up at night. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and until next time, I will see you out in the field.
What question are we asking again, Johnny boy?
I want to know what keeps you up
Jesus.
Do it again. Give me it again.
Okay. So here we are again. People are like, oh, what are they going to talk about now?
Troy, you're talking to your window, Troy. I'm right here.
Well, I was trying to get closer.
I have this nice,
trying to get the effect
nice view of your
hello.
neck.